Welcome to the 22nd episode of the series Decolonizing the Mind. I have a bit of a flu for a few days, so my voice is different than it used to be. You'll see in the screen a QR code, which, if you scan it, brings you directly to the website with all the lists of the video podcasts which I've been doing, and where you can click on an item to download the PDF of this presentation. Now, today I'm talking about civilization, and specifically the civilization that came out of Western Asia, Islam. But before I do that, let's go to what's happening in Palestine. Now, um, we are now, the genocide stands at 20,000 people killed since the invasion, 50,000 wounded. This is a horrible Christmas. Normally, I would extend a Merry Christmas to my Christian friends, but I'm not able to do that because of the horrors that Christmas brings for the world and especially the people in Palestine. The offensive of the Israeli occupation forces really didn't accomplish much. Hamas is still firing rockets. They can't destroy Hamas. They are killing civilians, but militarily, they are not gaining anything. In the north, Israel is forced to close settlements, and no new settlements are allowed because of the bombing and the rockets fired from Lebanon by Hezbollah into Israel, which relieves the pressure in Gaza a bit. The settlers are angry because they were setting up new settlements and they were consolidating the old ones. So you see that the war is having effect on the settlers' policies. Since October 7th, 500 Israeli military men, soldiers have been killed. Compare that with the Lebanon war, which lasted more than a month, in which 121 were killed. And this tells you that the war now going on in Gaza has a heavy toll on Palestinians, but equally so on Israel, which is seeing casualties they had never seen before. And in the way the world powers relationship are changing is with a report last week in the Israeli media that China has started a technological boycott of Israel in a silent way. Chinese companies who used to provide Israel Defense Force, in fact, with military technology, are now uh, putting up uh, lots of paperwork saying that the Chinese government uh, are looking close at their operations, and basically the industrial complex in Israel is getting hurt by the fact that they can't get the components they need from China. And that tells you that we are in the middle of a shift, at the beginning of a shift of world power relations due to the war in Palestine. And I guess that what we will see is that this war will develop where China, Russia, all the forces which are struggling against the US will coalesce, and we will see if Israel will exist at the end of 2024. Now let's continue my series on civilizations. In this series, I talk about how to look at the world through the lens of civilization, the concept of civilization, which is a collection of society based on a specific knowledge base. And The Western civilization is based on the European Enlightenment. And you see in China, which began as a communist revolution, is now looking at the Chinese civilizations for a source of inspiration. You see in Russia, where they look at Eurasianism as the theoretical foundation of Russian identity, Russian civilization. Um, and you look at India, how they are struggling with what is Indianness and Indian identity, and how to look at the relationship between the Indian civilization and other civilizations. And in this part, I'll discuss the civilization that came out of Western Asia, Arabia, in the 17th century, Islam. They began in Western Asia with, the Prophet Muhammad receiving the revelations from the angel Gabriel, of which came the basis of the Quran. And then the second convert was his wife. And then now, 1400 years later, there are 2 billion people, a quarter of the world, who are Muslims. There are 3 countries in the world which have in the name of the country Islamic Republic. The Islamic Republic of Iran, Pakistan, Mauritania. There are 50 countries with a Muslim majority population. And you could see how Islam developed and grew through 2 major sources: trade, economic relations, and missionary activities, and then military and violent conquest. That was also there. And now Islam has developed through dynasties in different parts of the world. In Western Asia, from Egypt to Iran, in North Africa, Sub-Saharan Africa, Horn of Africa. 50% of Africa consists of Muslims. In Eastern and Southern Europe, in South Asia. So the expansion of Islam was not totally global, but to a large extent very global. In 1969, the Organization of Islamic Cooperation was established as an intergovernmental organization. It has 57 member states. If you look at the name of the states and where they are, you see that it's quite global. Afghanistan, Albania, Azerbaijan, Bahrain, Bangladesh, Benin, the United Arab Emirates, Brunei, Darussalam, Burkina Faso, Algeria, Djibouti, Chad, Indonesia, Morocco, Cote d'Ivoire, Palestine, Gabon, Gambia, Guinea, Guinea-Bissau, Guyana, in Latin Abiyala, Iraq, Iran, Cameroon, Qatar, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, the Comoros, Kuwait, Libya, Lebanon, Maldives, Malaysia, Mali, Egypt, Mauritania, Mozambique, Nigeria, Uzbekistan, Pakistan, Senegal, Sierra Leone, Somali, Sudan, Suriname, also next to Guyana, Syria, Saudi Arabia, Tajikistan, Togo, Tunisia, Turkey, Turkmenistan, Uganda, Oman, Jordan, and Yemen. Quite a list, but it gives you a sense of how, on the level of intergovernmental relations, the span is of the Islamic community. There are 2 major schools. Major, I mean, there are smaller ones in Islam, which is the Sunni, 85%, and the Shia, 15%. And they form the major schools of thought within Islam. Within the Sunni Islam, you have even further divisions in schools of jurisprudence: Hanafi, Shafi'i, Maliki, Hanbali. And then you have many different cultural traditions from Indonesia to Azerbaijan. So Islam is a very widespread, pluriversal, diverse community of believers. Islam plays an important role in the narrative, in the clash of civilizations that Samuel Huntington has put up. Huntington says conflict along the fault line between Western and Islamic civilization has been going on for 1300 years. So he refers basically to the Crusades. One such challenges come from immigrants from other civilizations who reject assimilations and continue to adhere to and propagate the values, customs, and cultures of their home society. This phenomenon is most notably among Muslims in Europe, who are, however, a small minority. So Huntington is saying, look, in the clash of civilization, Islam is a major force which we have to reckon with. Now, within Islam, you could have another lens to look at Islam and colonialism. One is through the lens of conformism and the other of modernity. Said Ahmad Khan was an important Islamic thinker from India. He was in the service of the British West India Company, and he was loyal to British colonialism. But he was important because he had a lot of influence among Muslims in India. And he said, I'm in favor of the consolidation of the British government. Not because of any love or loyalty to the British, but only because I see the welfare of the Indian Muslims in that consolidation. And I feel that they can emerge from the present state of decline only with the help of the British government. So he argued that Islam was in decline, and through the concept of conformism, where you conform to the modern British standards, Islam could be uplifted. And so there is this idea that Islam needs to modernize, just as Christian theology modernized, and the lack of modernization is what is responsible for the decline and stagnation in Muslim countries. So he didn't blame colonialism for it. He blamed the fact that there was something wrong within Islam, which needs some kind of enlightenment, something that you hear later in the 20th century and even now, that Islam needs an enlightenment, just as Europe needed an enlightenment because religion was Christian theology was hampering the development of science. And then you have the anti-colonial tradition in Islam, which is an anti-colonial response to modernity, the concept of pan-Islamism, the fundamentalism, which has an anti-colonial dimension. And I'll discuss the specific case of Iran because of the importance of Iran in geopolitics today. The anti-colonial response is typically visible in the debate between the French racist Ernest Renan in the 19th century, end of the 19th century. And Renan argued that the Muslim religion was by its very essence opposed to the development of science, and that Arab people by their nature don't like either metaphysical science or philosophy. It's purely racist things that were put up by leading intellectual. Renan was a leading intellectual of the French establishment at the end of the 19th century. Now, Jamal ad-Din al-Afghani, a pan-Islamist, who argued against Renan, says, look, modern science is not in contradiction with the Quran, like the Bible was. And he says, I quote, the Muslim must not turn to pure imitation of Europeans, as this will open their countries to the acceptance of European rule. So he says, if you accept this idea of the enlightenment of the Islam, you will open up your countries for European colonialism. Is that instead they should find the inspiration for reform and science in their own religious texts, especially the Quran. The latter, if properly interpreted, will be found to be compatible with modern values and even to predict them. So Al-Afghani developed his argument and said, Renan, Muslim civilization saved science for Europe. They translated the Greek and Roman literature were translated by Arabs in all major disciplines of science and transmitted to Europe. And that is how Europe got to learn about Greek and Roman scientific achievements. Now, Pan Islamism is this movement comparable with Pan Africanism that tries to unite people from a different ideological or ethnic, in this case, Pan Africanism unites the Africans around the globe, and Pan Islamism tries to unite the Muslims across the world in a mobilization against colonialism, European colonialism. And Pan-Islamism was and still is a strong movement to unite Muslims, Sunni, Shia, and direct this unity against colonialism. And I mentioned Jamal al-Din Afghani, but you have others, Muhammad Abdu and Said Rashid Rida, and many other thinkers promoting this idea of Islamic unity against colonialism. And then within Islam, you have also this fundamentalist schools, Wahhabism, which is a European word which for Salafism, which basically is anti-Western, but also promotes the Sunni Shia divide and the aggression against other religions. You could see it in 2001 when the Taliban, inspired by Salafism, blew up 2 6th century monumental statues of Buddha carved into the sides of a cliff in the Bayman Valley of central Afghanistan. In 2016, ISIS destroyed the monuments of the ancient city of Palmyra. These are, although anti-Western, are also very reactionary in their policies. I'll discuss now the specific case of the Iranian Revolution. The Iranian Revolution is a major event in world history, comparable maybe like the Russian Revolution, the Cuban Revolution, the revolution in China, in Vietnam. And it is worthwhile discussing the impact of the Iranian Revolution because Iran is not a typical Muslim country. It is by the revolution of 1979, it came under tremendous political repression of the Shah. And to see how the Iranians look at themselves in terms of colonialism revolutionary, Ayatollah Khomeini wrote, he says, Islam is a religion of those who struggle for truth and justice, of those who clamor for liberty and independence. It is the school of those who fight against colonialism. In order to ensure the unity of the Muslim people, to liberate the Islamic homeland from the domination of the influence of imperialists, we have no other way out than to form a true Islamic government, do whatever is necessary to overthrow the other tyrannical pseudo-Muslim governments put in place by foreigners, and once this goal is attained, to install the universal Islamic government. So he's basically saying colonialism is our fight, and Islam is a source, religious, theoretically, that helps us to understand how we can do it. And he says, once we establish an Islamic government and the Islamic communities, he's not talking about China, he's talking about, the Islamic societies. An Islamic government, he says, is based on the rule of law. In an Islamic government, all people are under the protection of the law. No one may endanger their safety, break into the houses, arrest them, imprison or exile them, or similarly execute them on the basis of a simple accusation or suspicion. Under such a government, everyone can have full confidence in the law of the Prophet, and no judge or dignitary dare act contrary to it. So he says, an Islamic government is a government that liberates people from oppression. It's not how in the West Iran is presented, because that they are presented as a ruthless dictatorship. And Ayatollah Khamenei, the current leader of Iran, the religious leader of Iran, he says the great ideal of the revolution is establishing a new Islamic civilization and preparing for the rise of the son of the greatest, Wilayat, guardianship. So this is interesting because this concept of the rising sun, I'll talk about that in the next episode, is similar to the concept of the rising sun of the Aztec emperor Cuauhtémoc, who talked about the idea that with colonialism, the sun went down, but one day there will be a rise of a new civilization, a rise of a new sun. And here you see Ayatollah Khamenei talking about a similar thing. So this new Islamic civilization, this is a society in which knowledge, progress, dignity, justice, the power to face global waves and wealth exists. We have such an image in mind. We call this the new Islamic civilization. So you see, this concept of looking into the world as through the notion of civilization is already vested in the leading thinkers in Iran. And then he goes a step further. He says, you know, our Islamic civilization is not just for Muslims. He says we should be striving for the new Islamic civilization for the sake of humanity. This is dramatically different from what powers thinks about humanity and from how they act. This doesn't mean conquering land. It doesn't mean violating the rights of nation. It doesn't mean imposing one beliefs and culture on other nations. Rather, it means offering a divine gift to nations so that they choose the right path of their own volition, and with their own choices and decisions. The path that global powers have dragged nations toward is a strong and defiant path. Today, this is our responsibility. So he's saying we are building a new Islamic civilization for the world, not to convert the whole world to Islam, but have people make their own choices on how they want to live, and we should protect that choice. And he compares it with how Western civilizations look at the world. It says, one day, by using the knowledge and philosophy of Muslims, the people of Europe managed to build a civilization for themselves. He's referring to the Arab translation of the Greek and Roman classics, and therefore, science, philosophy has been saved for Europe, where the European Enlightenment then used those sources, which were saved by the Arabs and by Muslims. It says about the European civilization. Of course, this civilization was a material one. Since the 16th and 17th centuries of the Christian calendar, Europeans began to shape a new civilization. Because it was a material civilization, they used different instruments without any scruples. On the one hand, they moved towards colonialism and towards conquering nations and looting their wealth, and on the other hand, they strengthened themselves from the inside by the means of knowledge, technology, and experience. This was how they helped the civilization dominate the human world. This was what the Europeans did in the course of 4-5 centuries. The civilization that they presented to the world provided beautiful reflection of technology, speed, comfort, and different amenities for the people, but it didn't provide them with happiness and it didn't administer justice. So he says the European Enlightenment, came up with knowledge and it led to technological progress and people had a better life, but that doesn't mean that they were happy. Now, if you talk about Iran in the West, your gaze is determined by what you see of about Iran in Western media, which is a theocracy, a dictatorship of the Ayatollahs, but you have to study a country by looking at the sources in the country themselves. What are their key political and philosophical thinkers think about? How do the people in Iran look at themselves? So you try to follow the Iranian press to get an idea of what's going on in Iran. If you follow the Western press to get an idea of what's going on in Iran, you won't be able to understand Iran. Iran is a functioning democracy. They have elections and many political parties. They have presidential debates, you know. But the categories of left and right in the West are not applicable there. This is a functioning democracy where people have chosen to set up their own society as an Islamic society. For 1400 years, they have been living like that. And then came colonialism and turned things upside down, installed a brutal dictatorship for which they have liberated themselves. And they have ideas about how to set their own society. And they are being attacked on a daily basis. Last week only, people were killed in Iran by so-called progressive forces supported by the West, former communists, and they've killed 17,000 people. You don't hear anything about it. But when there are things like the case of the woman who succumbed in a police station and the police was accused of killing her because of not wearing a hijab, there's a big campaign in the West about it. But you don't see the response of the Iranian people to that campaign. And the campaign, the message of the campaign is women are oppressed in Iran. But since the Iranian Revolution, by the way, the Iranian Revolution had a strong component of women coming to the street. And Ayatollah Khomeini had praised the role of women in the Iranian Revolution. And after the Iranian Revolution, literacy campaign and education and the progress that women made in Iran is huge. You could see it in the university where the majority of the lecturers are women. In business and in politics, more and more Iranian women take leadership position. You don't see that in the West. And because the ban on LGBT in Iran is there, Iran is regarded as a backward society. But they don't tell you that in Iran, transgender operations are free because they dealt with how to look at transgender. And at the end of the day, they acknowledge transgender, as something that people came as a result of nature, a man or woman in a wrong body, and they should be able to correct that. And I guess on LGBT, sooner or later, they will have their own. Now they are banning it. I'm not sure that it will stay because Iran is a society where many intellectuals are discussing many things. So, what I sorry, what I want to do with this contribution is pay attention to the fact that when we talk about a new polyphony or world civilization, we have to take into account that in Islam, this discussion is going on about a new world civilization and a new Islamic civilization, how it looks like. Both theoretically, how to construct knowledge, and practically, what does this knowledge help us in building a new world institution? And Iran will play a big role in this. So, next episode, I will deal with the narrative of civilization in Latin Abya and I'll go into the Aztec, Maya, Inca legacy, which is still there in Western Europe. Sorry, in Latin Abya. If you want to look what I say about Islam in the book, look at the index. You could download the PowerPoint at sandohira.com. You could support this channel, subscribe to the channel, share it with friends, families, and colleagues, and encourage them to subscribe and like it. Get involved in discussion group, and if you want to make a donation, go at sandohira.com to see how you can do that. Thank you for listening. Next episode, I hope to see you again.